achieve our stylistic goals. But this one is going to be particularly with respect to what can we do with respect to things that we have within a sentence, right? So that could be for today, and this is going to be the last thing. But I hope you remember all of them. Last class we discussed fragments also. So I told you that it's not just full sentences or paragraphs that come handy writing. You also have fragments, mostly used when in areas and domains which prefer more which have more creative spaces, the ones which prefer variety. It's very sparingly used in formal writing in professional spaces. However, it's not a no. It's not like no, you should definitely be not using fragments. You can, in cases where your professional space requires variety, emphasis, and some sort of creativity. But definitely not like a laid down written rule. Somebody will say, no, go ahead, use fragments. So that kind of liberty does not exist with respect to fragments in the professional or formal space. However, there are they can be sparingly used. There are certain earmarked purposes to which this can be tied to. So that and all we discussed last time. So I'm going to straight away start talking about structuring within the sentence style, use of stylistic features to structure the sentence from within, right? So like the features in style for the other case, for the previous part, we still are going to pay a lot of attention on emphasis and clarity, and this time around consistency too. Okay, so if you remember from the last class about sentence length and other things, we looked more at brevity, emphasis, clarity. All of them were a part of that as well. So here too, we're just going to carry over this same features into this, not going to make major differences. So all the style and features that we would be discussing will be about three main topics, which is emphasis. How can you so within the sentence in order to achieve better emphasis, better clarity, to write and speak more emphatically, and also how to remain consistent. How can you use these style, these structures to achieve consistency in writing, right? These three things, all the things that everything else that we're going to discuss would be placed under each of these rubrics for you to see. Okay. All right. So moving on, we'll come to the first one, right? So you can. So first one we'll be discussing is the emphasis. Okay, how do you order a sentence? How do you structure a sentence from within in order to have better emphasis? How do you make something emphatic, right? So if you remember from the last class, I told you that more important, or when you want to achieve emphasis, where do you place it? When you want to achieve emphasis on a certain segment, what is the better method to do that? From the last class, if you remember, I think we also talked about the general to specific pattern explained and weight in the last class, but in connection with that, right? If you remember, anybody who can recall, if you were present, or if you generally want to wait and see if that works. My idea. There are some familiar names here, but since I do not go deeper into how many people are around, so anyone who can recollect, do you ideally place? I mean, stylistically, where can you place something for emphasis? Base your answer on what you understood about the general to specific pattern of organization in paragraph. Okay, so you need to refer to these things time to time and don't look all of them in isolation, right? They are connected to each other. It's not like, everything, every new thing is going to be a complete island in itself. They're all going to be talking to each other. Or if they do not obviously talk to each other, we will have to find out a way to make those talk. But here it's quite obvious. When we discuss the general to specific pattern, I told you, where do you use the general to specific pattern? At least that you should remember, if not anything else. What kind of purposes do they identify? This is for persuasive style, right? This is when you want to call people, when you want to, you want the person or the reader to take actions, right? So this is mostly directed towards people who are involved or people who are powerful enough to make decisions and policies. So you bring the most important part of your paragraph, the major point, the crux, which can also be called the topic sentence. This is something discussed when we were doing topic sentence also. I told you that the topic sentence needn't appear in a fixed position. They can come at any place in the paragraph, right? And when topic sentences appear as your last sentence in the paragraph, when they're towards the end, it's probably because they have the general to specific pattern of arrangement. Why do they do that? Because this is not an ordinary piece of writing. This is a persuasive piece of writing, wherein the writer wants some sort of action to be initiated. This is a serious issue that they are addressing. So things usually strictly in English, okay. What the style is when you want to emphasize, okay, when you want to throw prominence onto something, when you want to bring attention to something, when you want to bring focus onto something, the idea is that you bring it to the end. Okay, you play the end crystal clear so that the person identifies, or they have read everything before that and they understand the situation. Now they finally know what they have to do, right? So, keeping that in mind, anything that requires more emphasis always plays towards the end of the sentence, end of the paragraph, end of the sentence too. So that same style is tried while you are writing the sentence too. Okay? So look at the two sentences you have on the screen, right? You have, although they were completely happy with the committee members adopted her wording of the resolution. And the second one, that is, the committee members adopted the wording of the resolution, although they were not completely happy with it. Okay. So what did you do? Now, keeping in mind, usually when you have a subordinating conjunction like although, you try to put them at the end of the sentence. Okay, they come at the end part of the sentence. This is usually the practice. Although there are subordinating conjunctions can appear at all the places, but usually the advised idea is to keep them at the end, right? So in that case, this particular one would be a clear-cut case. But nevertheless, if you did not have, say, a subordinating conjunction, if your idea was to emphasize the part that the members have adopted the wording resolution, then you will have to put it towards the end. Whereas if your idea was to emphasize on the part that they were not completely happy with it, then you'll have to bring that quitting clause to the end. Okay, is that understood? This is similar to what we have already looked at in the previous class, and this just that we are talking about now within the sentence. That something that was possible for us to do with the whole sentence by bringing it towards the end is also possible within a sentence. You can structure phrases and within the sentence in such a way that the part which you want to make more emphatic can appear at the end, right? Nothing more on that. So that's about the end focus. Okay. Now, unfocus. This usually happens in cases where you have to stress on something, the object part of the sentence, right? So if you look at, if you can compare the sentences in front of you, look at them. Marijuana they used occasionally, but cocaine they never touched. Under no circumstances will permit smoking in public areas. Quiet he was, out he went, right? So if you try and rearrange this sentence based on how the sentence structure in an English should look. So it's SVO, and if I have to say out he went, usually my straight sentence would look like he went out, right? Are you with me? Understand what I'm trying to say? In the previous part, in the end focus within the sentence, you're not going to play around with the sentence structure. Everything is intact and in place. All you did is that the part you wanted to emphasize, the clause that you want to emphasize, you put them towards the end. But in case you just have like a small sentence like this, out event. So what you're basically doing is you're bringing the object, whatever occupies the object position, that part and the verb. Okay, in the case of say the first one, you are bringing the verb and the object part towards the front of the sentence. This is not traditionally the case in English. We know that, right? Follow the subject, verb, and object order, and rarely do we find the objects and the verb taking a front position. But imagine that is what you wanted to emphasize on. In this case, out he went, quiet he was. Under circumstances will they permit smoking in public areas, right? So all of them, the point here, the needed focus and the prominence is on the words that you see in bold. But the problem with them in an ordinary sentence was that they were in the object position, they were verbs. So now use this stylistic feature to front them and tell the person that see this part I am focusing on. Okay. Can you use them in formal writing? Again, the preferred style would be always in focus, the first one which we saw, because the good thing about that is that it will maintain the structure intact. You don't have to do anything and play around with that. Front focus, this particular kind of usage or stylistic features are more suitable for say things like billboards or signposts or something like that. Like say if you look at a traffic, some sort of instructions, some sort of commands which are to be displayed in public view. In that cases, this front focus style would be more helpful. But like I always say, it's not like you cannot use them at all. If the situation demands, if the purpose is well defined, fully defined enough for the use of, if it qualifies the usage of the focus style, then it can be. However, very sparingly, right? So when you're using it for an official piece of writing, longer than an email, let me put it this way, if it becomes easier for you. So if you're writing anything that is longer than an email, right, you definitely do not use the front focus. Okay, that's not allowed in formal spaces. So is end focus and front focus both clear to you guys? Yes, no.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, get it? Just keep this in mind. We should just know how they are used, and just out of this, front fork will not be a huge, it won't be a great successful style in formal writing, although can be used, right? All right, so we look at the next one. So see, remember we are still discussing on the tools that you can use, the styles that you can use while to build emphasis, okay, within a sentence. So first was the end focus one. Second, we looked at front focus, and the third one would be using their structures of sentences. Okay. Cleft sentences, I'll tell you what they are. We'll look at the their structures first. Okay. So just look at those examples, those sentences that you see on the screen. You would have seen all these sentences, very common ones. If not the sentences themselves, these kind of constructions would be very familiar to you, right? There are no simple solutions. There was no reason to be annoyed. It was human that caused the explosions. The ending that is the weakest part of the novel. But both these constructions, one with there and the second one with it, okay, they're very common constructions in the English language. Now, why do we use them? Look at the sentence carefully. There are no simple solutions. Okay. The focus now is on the subject, or rather, the only thing that you have in that full sentence, anything that is of prominence is the subject, right? The simple solutions. Do you see that? There is nothing else that is there which can take the prominence onto itself. Particularly the first sentence, there are no simple solutions. Does the word there have any meaning in the sentence? It appears to be the subject, the logical subject in the sentence, but does it have any meaning?
No.
Right? And same is the case with the sentence with it. It was human error that caused the explosion. Even in that statement, the word it does not have any meaning. Okay, that has simply been added for two reasons. One was to give emphasis on the subject. Second was to fulfill the requirement of the subject. We know in English we cannot have a sentence without a subject, right? Um, um, that's a basic grammatical rule in English in the construction of a sentence. You definitely need a subject without which your sentence is going to be ungrammatical. So for two reasons, you have these things occupying that position. One is to fulfill the requirement of the subject, and that is grammatical. The grammatical function of it and there is to fulfill the need of a subject. And what is it doing stylistically? Stylistically, its function is to provide to not focus onto the subject. Okay. So if you look at the sentences carefully, that is, I think it is loud and clear. We don't want to harp on it too much. So there are no simple solutions. There's nothing that comes into that sentence. It's just the simple solutions. There was no reason to be annoyed. There was no reason to be annoyed. What did you do? You brought the focus back on the subject. It was humor that caused the explosion, right? Can you rewrite this sentence? These sentences that you see? You can comment on that, and then maybe if you do that, then you can see the difference between it. What is the other way you can write the first sentence? There are no simple solutions. Can respond.
Can we write like this? Simple solutions are not there.
Sorry, repeat. I was not able to hear you.
Simple solutions are not there.
Simple solutions are not possible. Okay, simple solutions
yeah,
are
not possible.
possible. Okay. And how about the second one? There was no reason to be annoyed. Anything, no? It could be anything. Like reasons to be annoyed were limited, or reasons to be annoyed. Reasons to be annoyed was limited. Could be another way of writing that sentence, like we did for the first one. Simple solutions are not possible. Third one, it was human error that caused the explosion.
The explosion was caused by human error.
The explosion was caused by human error, right? So all you did is the same can happen with the fourth one also. Okay, you can look at how it rephrases. The ending, that is the weakest part of the novel. The weakest part of the novel is the ending. So what you have done with this kind of a revised construction is that you have brought the focus back onto the subject. So whenever it is required, you can make use of the their structures and it. Okay. This kind of construction is referred to as cleft construction. If someone is wondering what the word cleft means here, it's a name given to the sort constructions. Okay, and wherein you use there and it as the logical subject in order to put focus on the main subject of the sentence. Okay, you understand what I mean by logical and grammatical subject, right? So they are grammatical because they have any meaning of their own, both there and it in the sentence. They are only there to fulfill the requirement. They sit in that position because we need a subject. However, the main part, the major, the logical subject would definitely, in all the four sentences, we can identify what the logical subjects are, which are simple solutions, reason, human error, and the end. Okay. So these kind of constructions using there and it, they are referred to as cleft constructions. So, okay, next is the fourth method of bringing in emphasis in writing sentences or structuring sentences from within are the parenthetic expressions. Now, these are, you know that, right? Intonations and punctuation. So if it is in speech, then you use your tones, you use tonal variations in order to show prominence, right? What tone do you use if you have to use prominence? Nothing related to this, but just trying to understand. You try and use your acoustic features, the voice quality, in order to bring in prominence to your speech, right? So what kind of tone do you use? Intonations, do you use a rising tone, use a falling tone? You might have seen this while you watched that lecture on man pitch, right? So all of them are involved. Actually, all those suprasegmental features are involved in intonations also. Intonation particularly talks about the tone, but you cannot definitely have it without having set a pitch and rhythm also. So they're all interconnected. But what kind of tone do you use if you want to achieve greater prominence? Is that very difficult a question to answer?
Emphasis.
No. My question is, what kind of tone will you use in speech? For example, you want to give prominence to a certain part of your speech. What do people usually do? See, you don't. If you are not able to speak up, you can also use the chat section. Okay, that's all open to you. But try and participate. That will keep you active. If you keep listening to somebody talking, very easy to fall asleep. Right. So yeah, I get some answers in the chat. Okay, imperative tone. Imperative is the name that you give to a sentence that represents commands and wishes. What tone? Rising, falling. Will you use a louder, deeper, and a rising, climbing tone, or will you use a falling tone? How do you ask a question? When you're asking someone a question, do you use a falling tone or do you use a rising tone? All right, that's
Rising tone, I would say.
yeah, rising tone. I'm glad someone found it. That looked like a very disturbing silence. I thought this was known. See, when you're asking someone a question, why do you ask someone a question? You want to elicit a response from them, right? So obviously, everybody who asks a question, no matter what kind of question, okay, given it is not something that others should not hear, okay, that's a very different case. That's a different context altogether. In a normal situation, when you ask a question, it's the idea is that you want to elicit a response from the other side, right? So the normal tone that you use, rising tone. What's your name? Right? You don't ask someone what is your name. Right? You don't use a dull sentence. Sorry, a dull approach, or neither do you use a falling tone, right? Usually it is a rising pitch and a tone that you use for asking questions. Similarly, when you want to underline the importance of a particular thing, when you want to talk about the prominence of something, the way you emphasize, the way you give emphasis, or the way you stress upon that part is by raising the tone, right? By you use a rising tone. If you watch people, if you watch speakers, motivational speakers, you'll often hear them stressing on the part which they want you to focus on, and that's done by using a rising tone, by using deeper voice, right? Slower pace. All of these are the features, or all of these are the techniques that you use to bring prominence to what you're saying. Similarly, in writing, this particular prominence is achieved through punctuations. Okay, so along with the other three methods that we looked at, even punctuations can help you slow down, pause, right, and also give prominence. Whenever you pause, the idea is that you pay attention, right? You meditate on what is being said. So that function is also allowed by punctuations. Like, look at the example. Freud thought that he had discovered the underlying causes of many mental illnesses, right? So the most important part of that particular sentence lies on either side of the word of course, right? So you have two commas being used before all of them. So there's a comma after Freud and there's also a comma after force, right? Second one, the music business is not, in fact, an easy business to succeed in, right? So in both places, the commas is giving the required prominence that the phrase needs in both contexts. So just remember in mind, you have four of features that you can use the style or emphasis, particularly within the style. Emphasis, to achieve emphasis, you have four methods. One is the end focus, first one that we discussed. End focus is mostly based on, larger sentences. When you have a big sentence with multiple clauses, then you can use the end focus style put the most important clause, the most prominent clause at the end of the sentence in order to show the emphasis. Front focus, like we discussed, it's mostly in the cases where you have a simple sentence. However, it is the object or the verb part that you would like to stress upon, emphasize properly. So in that case, you find a method to front these and the verb in order to give it the greater prominence. Okay. Third one was the cleft construction using there and it. Okay. And the function of there and it was also to bring more focus on the subject by removing from the subject position itself and placing dummy subjects like it and there. Okay. Which only has a grammatical function to perform, but no other logically not a very important thing. Okay. And the last is, of course, using punctuations. Okay, it provides breaks, healthy pauses to your writing, and thus, in turn, gives the time to the reader or gives the space to the reader to stop, meditate, and give greater focus and emphasis to wherever the breaks have happened. Okay? So, this is about the 4 methods of how you achieve emphasis within the sentence. Okay, is that clear? Any doubts?
Yeah, like I have a doubt here. Like
Go ahead.
in a punctuation, like comma, we put a comma to emphasize the previous phrase, right, or the following phrase. Like here, what we are emphasizing, like music, busyness is not.
So if I remove, of course, so the sentence would be Freud thought that he had discovered. Okay, so then you don't need it, right? But you added that comma and that particular phrase in between because you wanted the reader to pause at Freud, right?
Yeah.
And remember that part of it better because discover the underlying causes of mental illness. There are many people who did that. Many people have worked with illnesses, but in this particular case, your writer wanted focus on Freud because we know that he is the one who did the most of the prominent works in. He's a big person in the field of mental illnesses and particularly psychoanalysis, right?
Okay.
So that's the point. And the same goes for the second sentence, right? There are many things which is not an easy business, but here the focus to be on the music business, right? So the idea was to introduce a punctuation and tell the reader that see, this is the we have many of them, but I need your focus on this part. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions, guys? Okay. So you can keep asking as we progress. If you don't have anything right now, you can ask it later also. Now, so we looked at the first rubric in the style in structuring within the sentence. We finished the first part on emphasis. We looked at all the 4. Now we move to clarity. Okay, what do we mean by clarity? Now this one is very, very important. This also not just under style, but generally under professional writing. One of the major points, one of the major features that takes up the or makes something professional or formal is the clarity, right? The feature clarity. Now let's see how do you do that by using proper styles within sentences. Okay, end with placing the longer structures at the end. Now, again, this is similar to what we looked at in the previous one in end focus. In end focus, what you did is you brought the clause that is on which you wanted an emphasis to the end of this. Now, it's the same thing here, but the difference is if you have longer sentences, right? Very, very long sentences like the ones that you see on the screen. There are multiple things being pinned together. There are chances that people lose focus onto what they have to pay attention to. Same idea. They're not adding anything more to it. But if that is the case, then you bring in the one with the longer structure, the one which has a long, among the 3 or 4 of them, you bring the longest one to the, because it is possible that the longest structure has more details, right? The longer one, they are long because they have more details, right? Of course, it's not because you had an unnecessary thing to it. That is in itself not allowed in professional writing. But this one is long, probably is you have added more fuller details to it. So if it has fuller details, if it has more details, then it should take the more prominent position, right? The person who reads it should get a better clarity of things if that's the case. If more details are added to the structure, then that is the one that should give more clarity. So for that reason, you place the longest structure with more details, fuller details towards the end of the sentence, right? Let's look at the example. Denial of politicians on the role of climate change as the reason for several cataclysmic floods is the real problem. This is the sentence you have. Now you rearranged it, you used the end weight principle and you wrote, the real problem is the denial of the politicians on the role of climate change as the reasons for several cataclysmic floods. Okay. Now you tell me in the first sentence, the denial of the politicians on the role of climate change is the reason for several cataclysmic floods is the real problem. Which part of that sentence is prominent for you? Which part is prominent for you? You have the answers on the screen, but I'm just trying to see, your responses. If you understand what I mean by, I'm trying to test if you understood what I meant by fuller detail. So it can definitely not be the real problem, right? It does not tell you anything. So
The role of climate change.
Role of climate change. Yeah. Okay, role of climate change definitely important. And let me also have a look at the chat. Deny politicians, yes. Then even cataclysmic floods, right? If you look at them separately, all of them, denial of the politicians, the role of climate change, several cataclysmic floods, all of them are important. So that full long phrase, the denial of the politicians on the role of climate change as the reason for several cataclysmic floods, that whole bunch is an important, it has fuller details, it has more information, and all that whole structure, the long structure becomes the prominent one. Because look at what follows it. It's followed by the verb of the sentence is, and then comes the object of the sentence, the real problem, right? Both of them not adding anything to what we want to do. But the first whole part is that full length is what is packed with information, right? So by end weight principle, what you would do, you'll just reverse it. You push the unimportant part, the unimportant in the sense, for the purpose, not grammatically. Grammatically, they are definitely important. So you push them to the front, right? You reverse the order and you bring that whole long structure with full details towards the end of the sentence and place it there in order to give it more weight, right? That is how stylistically it is better to place sentences like this in this way than the first arrangement that you see on the screen. Okay, that builds to the importance and prominence of these things. All of them are important. This is the denial of the politicians. Then there's the role of climate change, and then there's also cataclysmic floods. All of them related to each other and all important, right? So this is how you use the end weight principle. Keep in mind they are usually used for very long structures with several full details. Okay. Other examples you can see on screen. Einstein's theories have made many important technological developments which we now take for granted possible. Okay. So the important part of the sentences in each of them, we have more. Okay, these are the ones. Three of them. In all the three sentences, the things that you see in bold, the part of the sentence that is given in bold, they constitute the important detail. The longer clause structure and the ones which carry further fuller details, and the rest of them are definitely without bold. Okay, look at those examples and see the improved versions of each of the sentences. Please pay attention to it, watch it closely. Einstein's theories have made many important technological developments which we now take for granted possible. Let me ask you a question. So for example, say I wanted to emphasize on Einstein's theories. Okay? Say my intention was to tell people to focus more on Einstein's theory. Based on what you heard in the class, what do you think will be a method to do that? a method or more than a method? Let me take some comments from. How do you think you can rewrite this sentence in such a way that Einstein's theory gets importance? Let me see if you have followed these few things. Nobody? Don't even want to try? Just try and see. Can be wrong. If you're wrong, that's fine. We can see. But let's see if you're able to do it. What methods are available for you if you have to make Einstein important? Einstein's theory is important. Many important techniques have been made possible only by Einstein's theory. Okay, there's Navid. He has reversed the position. What he did is he pushed time towards the end of Einstein's theory. He used the end weight, not the end focus method for emphasis. Okay, you can take that. But anyone in Ishveshta, Einstein's theories, which we now take for granted, have made many. Okay. What did you apply that, Shweshta? Did you use any particular principle or were you just giving a free hit? Oh, okay. Oh, you use parenthetic expressions. Very good. Okay. Right. So the first part that Navid has told us was to inverse the position, brought it to the end of it. Then Shrestha used parenthetic expression. She put in Einstein's theories, comma, which now take for granted, comma, have made many important technological developments. Yes, that's also a very good method. There is another method that you can use. Anybody who wants to try, or I tell you? Just trying to revise, just simply going on and on will not help. Something has to be taken away from it. Or, no, sorry, what's this? The front focus method. So what will you do in front focus, Shrestha? Front focus, see, remember, front focus is mostly when you want to, you have some, very strange kind of elements in the sentence which ideally don't take the place of the subject, right? Like the sentence that you had, no? Out he went, quiet he was, under no circumstances. You're right, you can use that, but there are better methods to do this than using front focus. Reserve the front focus method for cases which to front the things which otherwise cannot be front. Okay, so that we leave aside, but you guys are leaving beside something. If you have heard carefully, can we use the cleft construction technique? It is Einstein's theories, right? That's also a good method to go out with this. And this is the one that is going to give it the most focus. If your idea is to focus mostly on Einstein alone, nothing else, then the best method to use would be the cleft structure, the sentence construction, right? Where all you have to do is, it was Einstein's theory. So how will it look after I do it? It was Einstein's theories which have made many important technological developments which we did. The rest of it is not important. The moment you say it was Einstein's theory, the reader automatically knows my stress is on Einstein and the theories. Okay, right. So just do this as you try and use multiple methods and see how you achieve stress and emphasis. I was just trying to give you an example of how you do that. Okay, so for this part, we were looking at weight principle. So what we did, we just we just brought the longer structure carrying more information towards the end, right? Einstein's theories have made, so you see this, no, the same sentence can be done in multiple ways based on what you want to focus, right? If your idea is to focus on Einstein, then there is a method. If your idea is to give focus and clarity on the details of what he did and other things, then there is another method. So everything is possible, which means every part of the sentence gets a chance to be emphasized based on the need of the author, right? So there is democracy, no problem. Einstein's theories have made many important technological developments, so on and so forth. So, N-weight principles would bring the longer phrase, made many important technological developments, which we now take for granted towards the end. So, looks like Einstein's theories have made possible many important technological developments, which we now take for granted. Second one, the value of trying to identify the problem and to provide the tools necessary to make education of these children a success is not questioned. The whole phrase, the large, long phrase, comes towards the end. So no one questions the value, and so on and so forth. So see, this particular style is specifically reserved for cases for sentences which have long structures. Okay, very long phraseology. Same goes for the last one. That the recession will be longer, deeper, and more painful than was expected only a few weeks ago is very possible, right? The same thing happens to it. It is very possible that the session will be longer, deeper, so on and so forth. Okay, the next one is misplaced expressions. Now, this is something that happens very often in writing, right? So look at the examples straight away and identify what they mean by misplaced expressions. So the first one in each set, they are the misplaced expression, and the second one is the right way of writing them. Okay. So immediately afterwards, I remembered having met her. Okay, it's a misplaced construction, placed expression. What should be the case is I remembered having met her immediately afterwards. Right. So why do you say that? Grammatically, immediately is a adverb, and it's not a very good practice to use adverbs. It's not a very good practice to front the adverbs unless it's like a very specific situation, right? Wherein the emphasis has to be on the adverb. But in normal situations, particularly in the formal writing space, not a good idea to front adverbial complements, right? So I remembered having met her immediately afterwards, right? Because see, adverb is even otherwise something that should qualify the verb, right? So it is nice and structured if it follows the verb than fronting it. Okay, and fronting it will give it unnecessary emphasis and will give out a very different meaning than what you would actually do. So keep that in mind. He had not realized how slim she had become before he saw her. Okay, that can be changed to before he saw her, he had not realized how slim she had become. Okay. She told him that it was all a joke in a calm voice. Okay. You can't see the screen, Ravikant? Is it visible to others? Guys? Visible, no? What happened, Ravikant? Okay, all right. Maybe he meant something else. I didn't understand. Okay, all right. So let's move on. She told him that it was all a joke in a calm voice. A better way, it's a misplaced expression again. She told him in a calm voice that it was all a joke. Okay. Fifth one are cases where the usage can be the misplaced expressions can happen because of more one interpretation possible of the expression, right? So in this case, that expression is which one do we have? Just a minute. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So the fifth one is a case where you have certain expressions which can give you multiple readings. It can have several interpretations. So like the word here again, right? This is the one which we are focusing on now. Okay. So look at how again is used differently in both the sentences, and in both sentences it gives you different meaning based on where it is used. There is another word like this in English. Can you tell me what that is? There are many such words, but one very common word. Like again. So look at that. I told them again the meeting had been postponed. So I again told them the meeting had been postponed. I told them the meeting had again been postponed. Okay. Both cases you get different readings. What does the first sentence mean? I again told them the meeting had been postponed. The focus is on the person, right? So I again told them, right? And the second one, it is about the meeting itself. The meeting had again been postponed, right? So you just by changing the position of the word again, you have uh, achieved the task of emphasizing in the first sentence on the speaker and in the second sentence on the meeting itself. The act of having meeting, of the act of getting the meeting postponed multiple times is stressed in the second one. Can you not read it from the statement, guys? Yeah, no response. Is it because you have not understood, or is it because you don't want to speak? What if you use at the beginning of the second sentence instead? Again, I told them the meeting had been postponed. That would refer to the frequency itself. Okay, that would refer to the frequency of having told that particular sentence. Shrestha. This is that there it won't be on the subject as in I or on the meeting. That would be then distributed to the whole sentence. It's about that particular message being the frequency of having said that particular message itself. Okay, Srisha. Okay, all right. Fine. So yeah, I hope it's understood. Although there is no response, I am just going to take it as it's understood. There is another word in English which is very commonly comes to such discussions. Okay, know the word only, right? You use the word only. You have a sentence and find a way to use only with it. And every time you place only with a different before a different word, it's going to give you different meanings. Every time you'll get a different reading, right? So these are very interesting units in English. That's about the second kind of expressions. Okay, some words which have several interpretations, which would mean differently in different ones when placed at different parts of the sentence. The previous case, the 1 to 3 cases, are the expressions which have to be written like this. Okay, this is the way you should be using them. Any other way of using them would be considered a misplaced expression, unless, of course, you're doing it for a purpose like giving prominence or other things, right? But in any normal condition, under normal circumstances, this used to be considered as a misplaced expression, right? Yeah, that's the idea. Okay, so moving on. Okay, rephrasing of abstract nouns with third one of achieving clarity, right? Rephrasing of abstract nouns with adjectives or verbs. So look at the sentence. Since the decriminalization of public drunkenness, people have been avoiding Broadway Park, where drunks have been congregating. That is rewritten as, since it is no longer a crime to be drunk in public, people have been avoiding Broadway Park, where drunks have been congregating. So drunkenness. Okay, abstract nouns, and you rephrase the abstract nouns with adjectives or verbs. You change that whole abstract noun drunkenness. You converted that into an adjective, in this case, drunk in public. Okay, and brought in more. You got more clarity to the statement instead of using something complicated, very complicated thing like drunkenness. So just you reduced it into drunk because that is enough. That's all you had to say. Second one, if the fox population were not controlled by the fox hunting method, other techniques would have to be employed. So you can simply say, if the fox population were not controlled by fox hunting. You don't have to unnecessarily write method because it itself, it has the meaning of the method inherently in it. So don't have to write method again, right? So you cut down on the larger phrase and you put a word like hunting in this case. Then I went to see Saving Private Ryan in spite of the fact that I dislike war films. I went to see Saving Private Ryan even though I dislike war films. Okay, that's a better option than writing in spite of the fact. Okay. All right. So that's about rephrasing. And fourth one is too many modifiers. This should be very common to you. Okay? Some people have a habit of doing this very often. Indian history teachers. Okay, so too many modifiers. You have teachers and history and there's Indian two modifiers already. Ideally, one shouldn't be using more than one modification because it can clutter and create confusions, right? But in case you have many modifications to add, a better way would be to split them open into several phases. So, like in this case, Indian history teachers can be rewritten as teachers Indian history. Okay, so you have it's always better that there's one modifier attached to the noun. Okay, it gives you better clarity, right? Again, remember, we're not saying that Indian history teachers is wrong. Okay, no one is telling you this is a wrong usage, but all we are saying is it's a bad style in formal writing. If you club too many modifiers together to a noun, then it's going to be a bad style. Grammatically, this might be perfect, no issues. Okay, I mean, there's this whole thing called adjective order, right? Wherein you decide what kind of adjective comes first, goes second, third. So which means grammatically it's fine to use it, but stylistically this would be considered a very bad style to use. All right. Fifth one, subordination, and which means you need to split longer sentences. I think this should be a lot of you would be aware of this one, right? People always tell you don't write too lengthy sentences, and if you have very lengthy sentences, break them open into shorter, neater sentences, right? So, like, look at the one that you see here. Because many minor revisions were still required in the draft of the document, contact with individual committee members was made by phone or letter, as the committee had been dissolved by the board and was soon to be replaced by an entirely new committee made up of members from a different department within the university. Okay, what do you understand? Too many things together. Anybody, I think it is going to take them some time to wrap their head around this. Okay, very long, breathless sentence. Too long. What you can do, you can split them into three sentences like you see on the screen. Many minor revisions were still required in the second draft of the document. Committee members were individually contacted by phone for their views on the draft since the committee had been dissolved by the before. An entirely new committee was soon to be formed consisting of members from a different department within the university. Okay, so it just means that you just cannot go on endlessly. Somewhere you need to put a break and then show the what about Charles Dickens, Naveed? Yeah, right. Yeah. Just it's not just Charles Dickens. You know, there are many people who use this kind of technique to do that. You know, particularly, I think it had something to do with the writers of that time, particularly around the 18th century. You look at most of the novels, you'll find these kind of long pieces of very breathless things put together, very long sentences. Okay. Well, fiction writers, they have something to achieve when they do things like that, but we are saying no, not in formal space. Please don't do it. Okay. Parallelism, I think it's, you can look at these examples when you see the materials. I think I already discussed parallelism enough with you. Okay, so I'll quickly just show you one or two examples so that you understand. Or let me pick the one which should be useful for you. Let's look at the first one maybe. So this is an example of coordination between clauses, right? So if you're using one kind of clause, use the same thing for the other also. Don't mix between them. So they discontinued the production of the paints because the results of the field test were unsatisfactory and a lack of interested customers. So to make this a parallel construction, I told you that you have to use grammatically identical units, right? So if you're using a coordinated clause, then use a coordinated clause for the other also. Cannot have a noun phrase and then a coordination clause. So you can correct it to the sentence given there. They continued the production of the paints because the results of the field test were unsatisfactory and there was a lack of interested customers, right? So both now, previous sentence, one was a noun phrase and one was a coordination clause. The second one, you change both of them into coordination clause, the coordination of clauses, right? Or if you want to use, say, noun phrase for both, then it will look like production of the pain because the unsatisfactory results of the field test, lack of interest customers, right? So you change the results of the field test were unsatisfactory to unsatisfactory results of the field test. So replace it with a noun phrase, right? That's about parallelism. You can see several examples of these. The second one is an example of the parallel structure between prepositional phrases. In the previous sentence, the first sentence, you have one as a prepositional phrase and the other one as infinitive clause. You will find long queues in the bookstore. That's the prepositional phrase. And to pay your tuition, infinitive clause. So since parallelism is only between identical grammatical components, you changed in the second sentence both of to preposition, or you can change it, change both to infinitive clause. Both are allowed. Right? So anything that is striking and needs your attention, we'll maybe just discuss that. We realized that we had to make a decision, either marry or we go our separate ways, right? So either and or, the last sentence, fifth one, we realized that we had to make a decision, either marry or we go our separate ways, right? So using either on the first one, then you just maintain that segment of either and or. You don't have to insert an unnecessary be in between there because that will hamper. So this is going to destroy the parallel construction. So you simply say, we realize that we had to make a decision, either marry or go our separate ways. No need of adding anything in between that, right? Then I prefer the novels of Hemingway to Faulkner. Okay. So you can write it in two different ways. You can say, I prefer the novel Hemingway to those of Faulkner. Or you can say, I prefer, simply say, I prefer Hemingway to Faulkner. Both of them are writers. Okay? Both of them are American writers, great authors. Then eighth one, you can see the coordination. If the cost of raw materials keeps rising, the more manufacturers will raise their prices. So what are the components in parallel construction here? The two different units, the two different part of the sentence, right? The first part and the second. Now you need to bring in together for parallel construction. So how do you do it? The more the cost of raw material rises, the more manufacturers will raise their prices. So what you did is you took the second part of the sentence, the more manufacturers will raise their prices, and use the same grammatical structure for the previous one. So you remove the conditional clause if from there, and you use the comparative phrase for the cost of raw materials rises instead. Okay. Or if you wanted to use conditional phrase, then the second option, if the cost of raw materials keeps rising, manufacturers raise their price. Okay. Now they are equal, they are parallel constructions. Okay. Anything else? That sounds okay. This collages derive both from that's okay. So you understand what parallel constructions mean, right? So that's the idea. Now, just the last part of this, which is consistency. So we discussed emphasis, we discussed clarity. Okay, we had about 6 of them under clarity, and the last in this is consistency. So consistency means you need to maintain the status quo, right? You cannot bring in things that don't relate to what you're saying. So two kinds of consistency you look at in this part. One is the pronoun agreement and also the tense agreement. Now, what do we mean by that? Quickly look at the sentence. Get a university map because they really help. Okay, corrected one. Get a university map because it really helps, right? So your pronouns should be in coordination. The subject, right? If it is singular, then your pronoun also has to remain singular. If it's plural, then your pronoun also has to remain plural. So get a university map is singular, university is singular. So when you refer to it, the reference, which is the pronoun, should also be singular. So that's what we mean by pronoun consistency or pronoun agreement. Okay. The second example in that, a manager should consider several factors when determining how they will deal with inefficient employees can be corrected to managers should consider several factors, one and so forth. Okay, so a manager is changed to managers. Fine. Now you can ask, but what we did is we changed the number of the subject. Why did we do that? That is because look at that sentence. The sentence talks about what the managers are supposed to do, right? This about the role and the duty of a manager, which is a general statement. You're making a generalization about the role of a manager. And when you make generalizations in English, when you want to make a general statement, the ideal method is to use a plural form. Okay, because it's for everyone. You're making a generalization for everyone to follow. So in that case, it's better to the suggested method in English statistically is to use a plural form, which is why we changed the manager to managers. And because they changed it to managers, now the verb will agree with the number of the subject, which is now plural. Get that? What if each manager should know? So that's what I'm saying. The difference is that in English, when you have to make general statements, generalizations, this is the construction you use. Okay, so you don't. Each manager has to do this. So that sentence is grammatically correct. Nothing wrong with that. But it's not a again. It's in bad style. Okay, a stylistician or a stylistic person will not. They won't approve of that sentence. If you're supposed to write this sentence in a document and send it for a verification, most often than not, you will get a suggestion to change this to a general statement like the one you just speak. Okay, Navi. Yeah. So again, there are many things which are grammatically correct and sound, but then they may not be considered stylistically good. This is why we are looking at it, right? It's not we are not doing this because we don't know grammar. We are trying to look what kind of styles are acceptable and look good. So yes, so that's about pronoun agreement. And then the last one in this is tense agreement. Okay, often this happens, these kind of mistakes often happen with people while they're writing reports. There's a particular tense that you use when you are writing a report. But what happens, use your control midway through, and then the major error in writing with respect to reports is the inconsistent tense. Okay, you start off with the reported speech and the past tense, and midway through you squander, you get into past, you get into sin, then you start using future somewhere. So this mistake or this error is most often found in reports. So tense agreement is very, very important. Like, although I worked until midnight, I can't finish all my assignments. Okay, what would you do? The first part of the sentence, definitely it says I worked, right? It's in past tense, which means anything that follows it should also take past tense. So you replace can't with couldn't, right? And that makes it past tense. Second sentence, if you had gone to the bookshop before the term started, you would be able to buy all your course books. Okay, so the first part of the sentence is you had gone, right? So that is in past perfect, which means the rest of the part will have to take the past perfect form. But what you have instead is you would be, right? So that's a simple past. You will have to change that to past perfect, which is would have been, right? Simple thing. So pronoun and tense consistency will have to be definitely looked into while you are framing sentences to achieve this in the preferred style. Okay. Yeah. So that's on various rubrics of style within sentence. Okay. So with this, we are going to stop with what comes as a part of style in writing. Next week onwards, we are going to straight away put this all to practice. You see, in one of the sessions when we are doing the email and other things, we'll have a very short discussion on what formal language means. All of what we have discussed are a part of formal language. But when you discuss these things, the reports and emails and all separately, we will talk about certain formal expressions which are, which are specific to them. Like there are certain things which you use very most commonly use only with emails, or there are things which are most commonly used only with reports. So those things will take up then, but the overall understanding of what style and all that remains this from what we have been listening to in the past 3 or 4 lectures. Okay. All right, guys. If you have a question, you can, or else we may meet this week, same time. I'll be here for the next 2-3 minutes. If you have any doubts, you can go ahead at mute and ask me aloud. Else we'll close it in another 2 minutes. Yes, Navid, go ahead. Yeah, maybe from next class onwards, you can have them. I will try and send them before, because that's possible. We can do that. Okay, or maybe I will have to check with the team and see. Okay, all right. I'll have a word with them and let you know if it's possible to send it beforehand. Shouldn't be a problem, but I think it's better to consult before taking a decision on my own. So yes, if it's possible, if it's a yes from the team, then I'll definitely do that. I'll upload it before the session. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, guys. Then see you next week. Bye and take care.